Well, hello, my Substackers, and specifically my Substack subscribers. Um, I have just taken delivery of something I'm quite excited about, and I fancy you might be quite excited about as well. Don't want to be too presumptuous. I've got the proof copies just in of Castles, which is my new book, which I've definitely mentioned. It's coming out in October in the UK and in November in the US and in all sorts of other territories as well. I think we've got a Dutch copy that's coming out simultaneously with the English copies. It'll, of course, come out in Canada, Australia, Germany, many. I've done a little sort of teasy video over on me socials, as they call them. But I thought because you people are special, that I'd tell you a little bit more about the book now that I've got a copy of it to sort of wave around as I talk. So I hope this is interesting. You can, of course, pre-order the book. I should say that. You can pre-order it in UK retailers, bookshop.org gets it from indies. Waterstones are going to have signed editions. There will, in due course, be a special edition via Millennia Books. Waterstones are going to do a special edition. So there's a lot of different options, but you can pre-order it now, and I would love it if you do, and if you would. The US edition will look different, as always, but you can pre-order that now as well. So Barnes & Noble, I think, have it on pre-order. If you just go to Viking, which is part of Penguin Random House, my publishers, you'll be able to see. I'll put all the links below, so you'll be able to see where you can pre-order it from. Anyways, you can lodge your order now, and I will just say that pre-orders massively help authors. It's just a very, very, very useful thing for authors to have pre-orders rather than orders the week of. But, do whatever you want. I'm just going to tell you about the book, so I hope you're interested. So this is a book that has, in some ways, it's the product of a whole lifetime. It's very specifically the product of the last 10 years. And I know a lot of people here have watched my television show that I made back in 2014 and 15, Secrets of Great British Castles. That was one of the most fun experiences that I ever had working in television. We made 12 episodes. Each episode, if you've seen it, you know this, delved into the history of an individual castle. We never ended up making a third season for reasons I've kind of rehearsed over the years. They were boring television financial reasons, and the third season was kind of pitched. It never quite got commissioned, and then the bandwagon just moved on. And so over the years, people kept asking me, are you ever going to do a third season of Great British Castles? And the answer increasingly was just, it was at first I'd love to, and then it was like, we're just not going to. But that left me feeling that I had a Castles itch to scratch. And so I kept thinking how nice it would be to do a book about castles. And my original thought for this book was that it was going to be 20 chapters, each one, a bit like Secrets of Great British Castles, just focusing on one castle I thought was special and telling it a sort of little a potted history of that castle. When I sat down to write it, I didn't really like that approach. It felt kind of lightweight in many ways. In terms of a book, it's a great format for television, but it didn't really pop off for me as a book. And I realised I was interested in a couple of things. Firstly, in castles themselves, and in that regard, I found I was interested in castles in a very broad way. So the origins of castles, not only in the Middle Ages, but all the way back to like the Bronze Age, even the Stone Age. Where did this idea of fortifying a residence, a living place, an area of control and command, where did that idea come from? How did it manifest in early human civilizations? What was the path along which castles went to become the kind of iconic castle that you see here, which is a sort of, high medieval castle, 10th, 11th, or 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century castle? And then what did castles become, particularly after the age of gunpowder made building in this style of defence is obsolete. What happened when they morphed into artillery forts? Why did they last so long? Why were people still building castles of various descriptions in the 18th, 19th centuries? How did the family tree of the castle split off so that you had artillery fortresses in the Renaissance? The third system American Civil War forts. The great sort of romantic, Gothic and romantic castles built in, Cardiff Castle is a good example in Wales, or the 19th century bit anyway. Neuschwanstein in Germany, probably the most famous of all the romantic castles. And then where did castles go? Why did we stop building them finally? What have they become? How did weaponry change in the late 19th, early 20th centuries to make castle building absolutely obsolete, so that fortifications started to go underground, first trenches and then nuclear bunkers? What is a castle today? So I was interested in that whole that big flow of the buildings themselves. The second thing I was interested in, I found as I started writing this, was the idea and not just the concept, but the dream. What does a castle mean? How did these sort of monumental military buildings start to feed into the imagination right from the beginning? So if, as I've done, you take the history of castles all the way back to the Bronze Age, the citadel, the fortified city, not much bigger than a medieval castle. How did that style of building start to feed into the human imagination? Well, we can see it very clearly in the Bronze Age. What's the origin of Western literature? It's the Iliad, it's the Odyssey, it's Homer. And what's the story of the Iliad? It's the story of a siege of a walled city and a citadel. And the pivotal point of the Iliad and the sort of starting point of the Odyssey is the penetration of the siege, the destruction of the citadel via the Trojan horse. So out of that military engagement comes not only a staging post in the physical history of fortification and of castles, but also a birthplace of Western literature. And then what happens? I was interested in charting that relationship between castles and ideas, dreams, literature, storytelling, mythology, legend, song, film. I was interested in tracing that, over the last 3,000 years. So that's what this book does. It is not a comprehensive world history of castles in the sense it's not an encyclopedia, but it does range very, very, very widely. So as I said, it starts in Troy. We go to Scandinavia for Viking ring forts. I go to Japan for the 16th, 17th, 15th, 16th, 17th century kind of heyday of Japanese castle building. There's a chapter on Great Walls, the idea that with a wall you kind of make a castle of an entire realm. So we're in China, we're in Iran, we're in Hadrian's Wall is a part of the story. There is what else we've got? There's chapters about the Crusades. There's chapters about Norman castles, of course. There's a chapter about chivalric castles, mythology. There's a chapter about the Italian Renaissance. There's a chapter about American castles and the particular American experience from pre-Columbus all the way through, as I've already mentioned, to third system Civil War forts and the beginning of trench warfare. So that's those are the things that are going on in this book. As well as that, there are tons and tons of really fun stories about castles, and it's much as the television program was all those years ago. There's a drive through individual storytelling. So this book pulls out human stories and shapes the narrative about castles around those. Anyway, that's the skinny. That's what nobody's heard before. That's the little sort of vibe I've gone for. I absolutely love this proof. This is going to go out to reviewers and such. But this is what the UK edition is basically going to look like. Do please pre-order it if you feel so minded. I'll be doing lots more castle stuff here on Substack. I've already started a best castles in ... series. If there's anything you'd like me to cover either in terms of this book or in terms of castles in general, hit me up in the comments. Plenty more to come. There you go. Have a lovely weekend.